First thing you'll probably notice is the Skydiver, at least the current one that we have on our website, has a like an emergency parachute in the front on his belly. Now the new ones, you'll notice they don't have that. And the reason that we have changed that is because most people have like a 40 size trainer, and they make a great drop plane, but the space beneath the belly of the airplane is really at a premium. So we removed that little auxiliary parachute because that's where the batteries used to be in there. Well, we redesigned it to get the battery on the inside, and that way allowing that much more room for your parachutist. But you may possibly have to modify your plane somewhat anyway. And by the way, we have a videotape of how we modified ours. We built a drop plane from SIG LT40 ARF, and we put a 60 size landing gear on it from a Astra Hog, and bought one of those Fultz double strut nose wheels and put on it, and it has made a fantastic drop plane. And most any trainer that's got a wingspan anywhere near 60 inches and a good 40, we've got a 46 OS 46 FX on ours, but almost any good 40 and a decent sized trainer with a wingspan of around 58, 60, 65 inches. Now this one of ours has a 70 inch, and we really like that. But that is the main difference you're going to see on your Skydiver from the one on the website. It doesn't change any of the characteristics. It's just to give more room under the belly of your drop plane. About the finish on your Skydiver, we spent it's been almost 3 years since we started this project. It took us almost a year to get the little Skydiver built and working properly, and then we had to make a parachute, then we had to find something to drop him, so it just time just seemed to get away. And but anyway, we at one time had jumpsuits for these fellas, but see, the movement on these arms, there's a lot of movement there, so we had to make the jumpsuit so big and floppy to accommodate that movement. It looked like a clown. It didn't look like a Skydiver at all. So I just decided to take the jumpsuit off and paint mine. I did, and then soon after the rest of our guys did too, because it just looks so much better. From a short distance, it looks great. Up close, I mean, it looks all right up close. It's just that he doesn't have a jumpsuit. He's just painted. But it looks just fine. And one of the reasons, other than it looking so ridiculous, that we decided to take the jumpsuits off, like if you have a hard landing, you need to inspect it really good, because you can really have some problems if you send one up damaged. And that is one of the main reasons we quit using the jumpsuits, because I had a hard landing one day and didn't want to take the jumpsuit off, and so I thought, it's okay. But the next time I went up, I had a complete and total failure. What had happened, this arm here, the right arm, is the one, the servo works this arm, plus it pulls this retract pin that allows the parachute to come out of its pack and open. Well, this arm had been cracked, and it got in a bind and wouldn't move, it wouldn't function. So poor old Diesel come speeding in and hit the ground like a ton of bricks. I don't know what all that noise is my dog's making. I think he's scratching and hurt himself. Another thing now that I want to mention about these little skydiver dudes, when you pack your parachute, pack it as compactly as you can. If you let it bundle up to where it's just so hard, so tight for you got to stretch the string over and force it over this pin. It could stall your servo. It could put enough pressure on that pin to stall your servo, and this arm then couldn't move, and of course it couldn't retract the pin to open your chute. I've had one failure that I think that's what happened. I'm not sure, but I think that's what happened. And the reason was I didn't carefully pack my parachute, and I had it too big in there, and I had to stretch my string too tight, and I don't think the servo had the juice to pull the pin. Now one solution to that is, if you wanted, you could put a more powerful servo on this one arm, or the cheapest way to go is just be sure that you pack it properly and you've not got excessive tension on that string that hooks over the retract pin. And one way to check that is pack it several different times and release it, like at the house, or take it out in the yard and hold it in the wind or something and release it and see if that servo will pull that pin. But if you'll pack it properly, I don't think you'll ever have any problem. But I had the problem. I've never been able to confirm it, but I think that that's what happened, because when it hit the ground, the ring was still over the retract pin, and I checked the radio. The radio was still working even after the crash. So I've got to believe that I had it, and I did it. I remember having to really pull hard on the cord to get it to stretch over and hook over that pin. So I've got to think that that's what it was. Now, I've never put a more powerful servo in mine. If it happens again, I certainly will, but it hasn't happened again because I've been more conscientious about packing my parachute. Now, the next thing on my list I wanted to talk to you about, well, this one's not finished and I've just got a servo sitting in there, but we bought these larger servo arms. These are not the original servo arms that came with the servos. We bought the longer ones because we wanted to be sure we got plenty of throw for the arms. Now, I believe that the original arms on these servos is probably quite sufficient to move your arms all you want. Now, they won't move them completely all the way down, but we've got so much turning power on ours that we don't need all the throw we've got, but we like it that way, because if we yank down all the way on one of the sticks, the thing will spin around so fast it just slings him way out. And I like it that way. If I want to turn on a dime, I can. But if you don't want to buy these servo arms, you could hook yours up without it. Now, these cutouts here for the push rods to work your arms, if you use a shorter arm here, you might have to cut out this cutout slightly, because it might want to scrub the edge, but that's no problem. It's 1/8" aircraft ply. You can take, well, if you had to, you can just do it with an X-Acto knife, but you can take a razor saw and saw a little split down through there and pop it right out. So it's no problem if you have to modify this cutout a little. But using these long arms, you shouldn't have to modify this, because before we send them out, we always put servos in and make sure that everything works properly with this arm. So if you use this arm, you ought to be okay. But we don't know what type of servos you're going to be using, what kind of radio you're going to be using, so we just sort of have to, we make it work with the equipment we've got, and then if you have to do any modification, it should be very little. And the switch we mount right here, and we're not going to cut a hole for that switch either, because they're all a little different, and I don't want to cut a hole and then your switch harness wouldn't fit it, so we won't put anything here. But this area here is where we put our switches, and there's enough room inside here to accommodate your battery and your switch. There's quite sufficient room there. When your Skydiver arrives, of course, you'll have the push rods with it. Of course, there won't be any servo, but we'll have the push rod connected to this ball link here at the length that we will need for this servo. Now, for this servo arm, the length could be a little different for your radio, but there again, it's no big deal. It's just a 256 rod threaded on one end with a Z-bend. I don't know if you can see but it's a Z-bend is all it is, and the rod is put on there with a Z-bend in such a way that the rod comes underneath the servo arm. That way, it gives you more clearance between that and the belly plate here, the breastplate. So if you have to modify it or have to make a new rod, it's just a very simple thing, because everything you need will be there, the ball link and the whole thing. You just might have to make a different length rod, but chances are it'll probably work because there's sufficient threads on there to move the thing. Looks like 3/8, at least 3/8 of an inch each way, maybe. Well, maybe not that much, but there's a lot of thread there that you can adjust it with. Now, the servos that we're using are high-tech. Now, these are SH40. I can't even read it. HS605, I believe, ball bearings. These are new servos. I've never used them yet. I've never put them in a Skydiver yet. But we use high-tech servos and Futaba servos. I've got some with Futaba and some with high-tech, just standard servos. And they work really great, except for that one time I was telling you about that I'm not sure if the servo was the culprit, but really the servo wasn't. It was it was my parachute packing that caused the problem. Okay, now another thing I want to talk to you about is adjusting the length of the steering lines on your parachute. Now, we adjust those before we send it out. We hang it up from the ceiling and adjust the lines on each parachute to the tolerances that we always put on ours, and they come out pretty good. Usually they'll track just fine, but once in a while you'll get one a little bit longer than the other, and your dude will want to turn slightly one way or the other. In other words, when he's going in a straight line, he'll be wanting to turn slightly left or right. And if that happens, the way we have, well, I don't have one here with the hookup on it. I'm not very well prepared, am I? But anyway, on the hands here, there's elastic, and then there's a little split ring in the elastic. And that elastic is to absorb some of the shock when the parachute opens. But this little split ring, we have it's like it's a little lobster claw hook, actually, that goes on jewelry, but it works great for our purposes. You can just latch it on and take it off in just seconds. But what we do now, on our parachute, you'll notice that all the lines are looped through and glued, except on this steering line, it's looped through that little lobster claw, but it isn't glued. We've got heavy-duty thread in about 3 places. The line is looped through and pulled up, and then we've tied it in about 3 places. and believe me, it'll stay there because I've got one of my parachutists, old Hubert, has got 60 jumps on him, and that's the way his are, and they've never come loose. But so that's the reason we do that, so that when you jump your little dude for the first time, if he doesn't track straight, like if he is turning to, say, to your right, okay, and what you want to do now, believe me, is take a piece of paper and a pencil with you and write down which way he's turning, because I'm telling you, if you're like me, you'll forget it by the time you get back to the house, and I've done it and made a correction and corrected it in the wrong direction and made it worse. So if he's turning to your right, just write that down, or if he's turning to your left, write it down. Now if he's turning to your right, that means this line here is a little bit shorter than this one, and that's causing him to turn to his left. So what you would want to do is either loosen this one up a little or tighten this one up a little. But I would suggest tightening the string rather than loosening one, because we found we didn't have good turning ability on ours. It took us months to figure out that we didn't have the steering lines tight enough. So if he's turning a little to your left, to his left or to your right, just shorten this line over here on his right arm, and then that'll pull him back into to straight line, and he'll track straight. But of course, if you think it's too much, then you could loosen this one. But if you do loosen it, and then you've lost the ability to, to really zing him around, then you just go back and tighten him again. And what I do when I get ready to tighten my lines, I take a little fine tip magic marker and mark that line right where it goes through the loop in the lobster claw. So, and then I move it half an inch at a time. That way you're not going to, go overboard. You might have to do it maybe a couple of times, but it's better than to do that, and then you get it right. But just mark it, and mark a half an inch, and move it, till it comes where you've marked your half inch. Then go back and try it again. In fact, you could do this right at the field. I mean, it's a simple matter to just clip the threads loose. There's no glue involved. Just need to have some thread with you. Okay, now the next thing I got on my list here, don't store your parachutists with the with the parachute packed in the pack. It won't hurt the parachute, but what'll happen, see on this pack, I don't have a parachute in this one, but on this pack you see these white strips here. This is elastic. Let me take the pack, comes right off. See, it's just velcroed on there. You see the elastic goes all the way around. Now what this elastic is for, when you pull the pin, then this elastic helps for this pack to open, because when it's packed in there with a parachute in there and you pull that pin, this elastic, it'll fly open immediately. And the reason you don't want to pack your parachute, to store it with this thing packed, of course, this elastic will all be stretched, and it doesn't take very long until all the stretch will be gone out of your elastic. So just when you put him away, if he's going to be put away for a week or whatever, just pull the pin out, let the chute come out, and just fold it up and just pack it on top of him. Or if you set him up on a shelf or something, just let his parachute hang down from the shelf. But if you pack it, and it, if you put it away in it packed, it'll stretch your elastic. And see, these packs come off and on just in seconds. I hardly ever take mine off. A lot of guys take it off every time they go to pack their chute. I don't do that because it's just, I can't see any reason for it. And besides, I did it once. And when I packed the parachute, I put it in backwards, and when the parachute opened, my dude was looking where he had been, not where he was going. So it's for me anyway, it's just as easy to just lay him down on his face. In fact, here after a while later on, I'll show you how to pack the parachute or how we pack it. Of course, you may have your own ideas about how you want to pack it, but the way we've been packing it is a good old dude up in Westerville, Ohio, Wally Gitchell. He showed us how he packs his parachute, and he said he has very few failures, and you know, he's right. The thing opens, man, it opens almost every time. Now, well, it does open every time unless you get something, have something all tangled up, because it's a good method to pack the parachute. But once in a while, you'll have a string get tangled over another string, and it'll come down twirling round and round or something. But we've never had a dirt dive because this parachute didn't open. I mean, it always comes out and tries to open. Like I say, it may have a string looped over the canopy or something and cause you like a malfunction, but we've never had a catastrophic disassembly because Wally's parachute packing method failed. They always open. Well, almost. I mean, they always open, but sometimes you may have a little malfunction where you've got some strings crossed or something. But I have devised a method that we're using now, and we are having fewer and fewer even of those little mishaps. And I'll show you here when we go to pack the parachute of the little things that we've done, and it seems to be really making a difference. If you do have a mishap, and once in a while you're bound to have a mishap of one kind or another, because the very nature of parachuting is, I think that's why it's so exciting, is because so many things can go wrong. But if you do have a mishap and bang your dude up, they're not hard to repair. They're really very simple to repair. I've got one, well, I've got a servo sitting in there, but you can see now they're built sturdy. See, the first one I built it out of balsa, and I had a dirt dive and old Diesel, and it tore Diesel into 16 pieces. He was scattered everywhere, but he was all balsa. I've still got him though. I keep putting him together, and he's been in at least 12 pieces 3 times that I know of, and then in lesser pieces, 3 and 4 pieces, I don't know how many times, because he was our first one, and all of our experimenting and all of the things that we learned through grief was done with poor old Diesel. But he's still jumping. He's still in action. So now these things are all hardwood. Well, we call it hardwood. It's like sometimes it's whatever Lowe's and Home Depot has in stock, but it's sometimes poplar, but it's, you know, what modelers anyway call hardwood. The only piece of balsa wood that we use in this parachutist now is the breastplate, and the only reason I make the breastplate out of balsa is since we don't know, excuse me, what kind of servos, how tall they're going to be and what have you, and they may be tall enough till they want to scrub the bottom of your breastplate here. So if it's made of plywood, it's going to be very hard to do anything about it. But this is actually half-inch balsa, so you can take an X-Acto knife even, or a moto tool or whatever, if it's scrubbing, and just dig you out a little trench for your servos to move in, and it's easy. And also the battery, see, that we're putting in here now, if it is a tiny bit taller than the side here, and in fact when you get yours, you'll see I will have routed out a little place in this breastplate just in case your battery is a little tall. I will have routed out a place in here for the battery to go into, so there'll be no problem. Everything will fit in here just fine. It's I mean, I started to say there's not any room to spare, but really there's a little room to spare there, but it's pretty compact, but it fits just fine. It's no problem to put your radio in. In fact, I'll bet you've put a lot of radios in little airplanes. It'll be a whole lot more trouble than this. This just got plenty of room. Now, when the big day arrives to go out to the field and do your first parachute jump, I'm going to give you a few little details here that maybe will help you some. Because flying this Skydiver is a lot like flying an airplane, or especially a glider. You can think of it as flying a glider with a heck of a sink rate. And that's basically what these things are. If you've seen any of our tapes, you can see how much speed these little dudes get up when they're up there moving around. What you want to do is you've got to kind of stay ahead of it and keep thinking and watching your altitude, and then just fly you a traffic pattern. Just fly you a pattern like you would with your airplane, because you want to be sure that you always land into the wind. Because if you don't, this little dude, we don't know how fast they go. We were in the process of rigging us up a measured course to figure exactly how fast they go, and then winter came along and we've never got it done. But they move along at a pretty good speed, so you go downwind and add that to his speed and land him downwind. I made the mistake of doing that one day, and he went down the runway like a wagon wheel. I mean, just over and over, cartwheeling over and over down the runway. And it didn't do a lot of damage to him, but it did some damage to him. So always fly your pattern, and you've got to you'll get the hang of this after a while. And you just fly your pattern, turn into the wind, and you can land him right in front of you almost every time, if you just don't get having fun and forget that he is coming down at a pretty fair rate, a lot more than a glider would. So, but it's an awful lot of fun to fly him, because you can fly a pattern and land him just. It's so much fun. I really can't explain it to you, but you'll see on your first jump. They're a great deal of fun. Just remember, don't get so excited that you forget. Remember to turn him into the wind, and then when he gets like 2 or 3 feet off the ground, a couple of feet anyway, 2 feet off the ground, then pull both steering lines all the way down, and that stalls the parachute. I think we've got some on our tapes, and you can see if you pull down your lines too soon and hold it, he'll screech to a stop and start to back up and then fall over. So yeah, you can stall the parachute completely. So that's what you want to do when you go to land. Get him into the wind, and when you get low to the ground, a couple of feet, pull both lines all the way down. You may not need to pull them all the way down. It depends on your altitude and a lot of other things. But you want him just to stall just at the time you hit the ground, because I think I've got one on the tape here that I stall him about 3 feet too high, and he falls down the rest of the way. But with a little practice, you'll get to where you can nail it every time. Excuse me. Okay, now these axle pins for the arms and the legs, of course I don't have these cut off yet, but we used to use wheel collars, leave them sticking out here and use wheel collars. But then we got to finding that our strings were getting caught up on the wheel collars at times. So we cut them off flush, and we make these holes the same size as the pin, so that gives you a good tight press fit. Now, if the pin isn't tight enough, or if it starts to get loose on you, just take a drop of CA and put on this, where the pin goes into the wood. And if you want it back out, then all you have to do is turn it around and take a punch and peck it, and it'll come right out, because that CA will not hold this slick music wire very well, but it'll hold it enough to keep your pin from coming in and out on you. So it's just a press fit, but it's a simple matter. Just if it gets loose, just put a drop on there and it'll be fine, and you can get it out easy. Just take a punch and peck it and it'll come right out. Okay, now we want to talk some about which arm you want which stick to move. I thought I had my radio over here. No, over there it is. Just a minute. Okay, now this is a 2-channel radio. It's a 2-channel Futaba Attack. By the way, you can see his name on it, Diesel's radio. Good old Diesel. These are just 2 channels, and the bad thing about a 2-channel is, you know, one stick moves horizontally and one stick moves vertically. We prefer, I've got a 4-channel in one of mine and I like it. I've got both sticks working in the vertical plane, and I like that because it's more like pulling down on the toggles, you know. But now what I want to talk to you about here is which stick moves which arm. Now that is a personal preference. Some of our guys do it one way and some do it the other. And the way I have, well, would you believe I don't have one here with a radio in it, but anyway, I can show you anyway. This stick, of course, works horizontally, this one here. And it's a little awkward to start with, but you'll get used to it in a hurry. Now, the way I like for mine to operate, when I move this stick with my right hand, I like for my Skydiver then to turn to my right. And when I move the left stick, I like for the Skydiver to move to my left. Of course, it's just backwards to the little dude. You know, he's moving left and to his right, but to me, when I pull the right stick, I want him to turn to my right, that's right, to my right. I pull the left stick, he turns to my left. And the reason that I like it that way, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, you're going to have him coming toward you or going back and forth in front of you. And to me, it just seems it is easier for me to keep track of him that way. And some of the guys like to have it just like your model, you know, when it's coming toward you. But I find with the parachutist, for me anyway, it's better. Right stick, he goes to my right. Left stick, he goes to my left. I just find that for me is better. But however you decide to do it, you know, there's no preferred way that I know of. I have never heard anybody say anyway. So we just do whatever's the most comfortable for each of us. Okay, now next we're going to pack the parachute, and I believe that'll be about everything. Of course, I may think of some more things here after a while. If I do, I'll put them on, because believe me, we spent 2.5 years getting on, almost 3 years. We had some awful times because we didn't know anything and never didn't know anybody to contact to find out anything. There's just nothing out there. So after all of this that we went through and everything that we've learned, one day, I guess, I don't remember which one of us was, said, you know what, we ought to share this, because what would we have given to have had some help or something to order, or, you know. So we thought, well, why not? So we just decided to do so, and here we are. So we'll pack the okay, before we pack the chute, I thought of a couple of more things that might be helpful. Now this is of course, the servos that operate the arms. Now notice here, see, this is the end of that Z-bend, and the rod itself, you know, is underneath. And if you'll notice on this rod here, we've got it all the way down to the lowest hole. That's to give it more pulling power. You know, I told you we thought we may have had a problem with the servo not pulling this pin to open the pack. So if you put it all the way down in this bottom hole, it gives you more, I guess you call it a mechanical advantage, and more power to pull that pin. And of course this rod here goes out to the arm, and it too comes in underneath the servo arm, see, and the same over here. So that when you put this lid on, it's not going to scrub. And if it does, if you'll notice here, see how I've routed a place out here, and your battery should be below, although just below the top of this, but we will route all these out, all that we send out anyway, we'll route them out just in case, and then you put it in there, you'll have no problem. That way it does away with that emergency chute on the front, which robs you of space underneath your airplane. Okay, that I guess basically is what I wanted to show you, just to be sure that you put that in there in the proper way to give you the most advantage space-wise. And of course you can see I don't have my servos in there completely tight, but just enough for demonstration purposes. So, and you can see the position of this. This is this 3-arm. It doesn't have to be a 3. You could cut that one off as far as that goes, but you need a 90-degree arm here, so that as your arm comes down, you see it pulls that pin, and you want to always be sure that that pin comes down even or below the top of the body here. Let me raise the camera up a little. Now you can see this pin right here. You want to be sure that it always goes down below, or at least even with the top of this body part. And that's the reason I've got that piece of that blue nylon. That's just an outer piece of the blue nylon, and I've got it glued in there and cut off flush with the top, and I've let it stick down here a quarter of an inch or so. That is, so if the pin does come below the top of the wood, it won't get snagged and not be able to let your arm go back up. So of course this will already have this in, but that's what that is for, just to ensure that your pin doesn't come below and get hung up there and not be able to let your arm go back up. So you can see the way that works, and there's plenty of room there, no binds, it works just fine. Your battery here, and then the receiver is down underneath it, and then the switch goes over here on this side. Well, I showed you that earlier on the tape. So now on this rod here, well, let me take it out of there and show it to you. Now, see, just take this servo wheel off and just lift it out of there. And take it off of this. Okay, now, can you see that? See, there's a little bend right in the top of that rod. And the reason we put that slight bend in there is just to ensure that when you slip that ring over that rod, that it's not going to pull off the top. So with that little place, a little bent place in there, and it still allows it to work free in here. I mean, that won't restrict it in any way. So that is just to ensure that your ring doesn't slip off of there. And it's very simple then to put this back on. You just slip this rod up in here first, like that, and then just sit it right down on your servo thing here. Okay, there we go. Just push it down. Push your arm all the way up to the top, like that, and then snap your thing on, and you're ready to go, except for putting the screw, of course, back in your servo arm. Let me do that. Be sure, don't want to forget to do that. Of course, I doubt if that servo arm could come off of there because it runs so close to the to that breastplate, but it might. That's like we said before, isn't it Murphy's Law? If anything can go wrong, it will. So that is basically how this hooks up. It's very simple. Of course, over here is the same. If you want to just take this screw out of your servo arm, pop your servo arm off, and then just lift it up and just pop that off, and you're in business. So when you want to put it back on, first I would just put my rod there and put the servo arm approximately where you think it's supposed to go. I believe it goes up a little higher than that right there. You push it down on there. Push your arm all the way up, and now see, I've got it in the wrong position. I've got to lower it a little. Okay, there's where it goes. And then just pop it on, and in business. Turn it on, it works better. See? Okay. And that's all there is to it, and just be sure that we put that screw back in there. Okay. There we go. And, well, this one's not ready to jump. He isn't finished yet, but that just shows you how simple the installation is. And basically, of course, is the battery. Now these little 2-channel radios come with dry cell batteries. This is a little holder that comes with the radio. Now, if you've got just a regular square battery pack, there'll be more. It'll be smaller than this. You won't have all this plastic to contend with, so there'll be even more room. Of course, this is the little 2-channel receiver. It just plops down in there, and there's even room for some padding. You don't need as much padding in these because you don't get all the vibration, but of course if you have a dirt dive, then you do get some. I guess it's the sudden stop. You want to kind of cushion those G's when you come to that sudden stop, but you won't need nearly as much padding in this as you normally would in your airplane, because you're not going to get the vibration in this that you get in your airplane. But there is room for some padding, which you should pad it some, by all means. Okay, well that's about it. So we'll get the parachute dude out here, and the one I've got, old Hubert, I'll get him out here, and we'll pack his parachute. We'll get to the parachute packing in a minute, I promise. But there's one other thing that I wanted to show you. I don't know if you can, how well you can see this, but I'm getting out of focus here. Come on, focus it in there, boy. See this pin right here? Right. Well, it's hard. That pin right there. Okay, that goes down through that corner bracket there, and that's what secures these shoulder hooks on here. Now, this pin isn't glued; it's press fit, and it's pretty tight. But once I bent one of these, I don't remember how, in a dirt dive or something, I guess, or just accidentally shove it up against something, and I bent it and ruined it, and I didn't have it removable then, and I had to do a lot of digging and grinding of epoxy, so I changed it and designed this. So all you have to do is pull this pin out, and that, excuse me, that just lifts out. Stick another one in there and stick the pin back in there, and it's secured then, so that if you do damage one of these, then you can repair it. I mean, you can replace it very simply. It's no problem. I have tried to design this thing for as few problems as we could possibly have, and we've spent 2.5, almost 3 years, so we're slowly working every little kink that we come upon. We work it out. So I hope these tips have helped you. I'm pretty sure they will, because they're things that you're not going to have to learn the hard way. So I promise now I'll get Hubert out here, and I'll go through all of the packing procedures. Okay, I know I promised, but I really promised this time. But there's one other thing I wanted to show you that if you'll do, will make it less likely that you're going to have to readjust your length of your push rods to your arms or anything. I've made little gauges to position these servos. Of course, I got that one labeled release side of body, and that right there is to take into account that triangle stock down in the bottom of the body. Now, what I do on this servo on this side, the pin release side of the body, I put that little gauge right in there, and I slide the servo over to that. Okay, now when you do that, then I've got now that's a 1/2 inch. This is a piece of 3/4 inch, where you can see it's like a piece of 3/4 inch stock that we use on the dudes. That should leave 3/4 of an inch between the two servos. And then in turn, this servo over here should be the same distance from the side. It's a tiny bit different. This will go in there, but I have to push it really hard. So this one is a little closer than this one, but it's so close I decided just to leave it because it won't make that big a difference. But if you will position your servos, this one over here 1/2 inch from the side and then 3/4 of an inch between them, then your servos are going to be in the same position that ours are in when we test these things to make sure that everything is working. So that then is less likely that you will have to make any major changes anyway to your servo arms and to this pin here, because this pin here, you see I've got that lined up pretty well with this up here, so that when the servo wheel turns, you see that pin goes to the left and then to the right, but it keeps it to a minimum, you know. So if yours is in basically the same place, then all this will match up and you shouldn't have any problems. Okay, excuse me. Now I am really going to do the parachute packing this time. But of course, if I think of anything else that could be helpful to you, I feel obligated to tell you, because I don't want you guys to have to go through the R&D that we have gone through for the past couple of 3 years. Although we've had a ball doing it, but it's been awfully frustrating at times. Okay, parachute packing next. Okay, here's Hubert, and I'll get him out here, and we'll pack his parachute. His arms up here, where they go. Okay, now here we've got the parachute collapsed down accordion style. What I mean by accordion style, so we just collapse it down like this. Now that's the front of the parachute there. So here's the openings here. So that's the front right there. Okay, now we'll take it and hold it up here like this. And now the front is in my left hand. Turn it over and put the front to my left. Smooth it back down and just sort of shake it out and get your strings kind of shook out there in some order. Okay, now the first thing, this is the Wally Gitchell method, and it works, and it has worked really good for us. Now you take this and fold it over in half, like that. Of course, front still over to my left here. And I'm doing this without the aid of a monitor. I just hope I'm getting all this on. If not, I'll have to go back and do it again. So you fold it over and get that in half, just like that. You see it better now. So this is folded down accordion style. The front is to the left. I fold it in half. Fold that in half. Now that leaves the stabilizer flaps are still sticking out there. I didn't fold it all the way over those. Okay, just make sure that your strings are shook out there. Pretty good shape. And then just take your hand and lay it on top of the parachute like this. Put your thumb underneath and fold it once. Put your thumb on top and go back and fold it twice. 3, 4, and 5. Now the front of the parachute is right here on top of the pack. That's the front. It's still pointing to the left. So just lift it up and bring the dude back here so you can get to him. And now here's those rubber bands that I was telling you about, and I'll show you the significance of those in just a second here. So that's the front right here. Turn it around and point the front towards the head. And I take a clamp and put on here because it makes it easier. If you don't, it keeps trying to unfold with you. So now I showed you the rubber bands. So what I do, I lift this up and make sure that my risers are in here. Make sure that my steering lines are inside. Now like see, here's this one out here. It needs to be in here like that. Get your risers back down here. Okay, then I take these strings, lay this parachute down here, take these strings and fold them, loop them just like this, and pick up this first rubber band and slip those strings right under that rubber band. Now, the reason I started doing this, we were having some problems. Sometimes strings would get hung up, and we'd find them hung up even on the front of the parachute. And I began thinking, how in the world do those strings get around there to get all tangled up? Well, before we just coiled the strings, laid them down there and put the parachute on top of it, well, I began to think about it. I saw a pickup truck going down the road one day with a cardboard box in the back, and that box was jumping up and down and side to side, but it never would blow out. There's some weird air currents, and I figure when that flap pops open as fast as it does, those strings, the minute that parachute started to lift out of there, the wind just took those strings and blew them everywhere. So I thought, if I will fix something to keep those strings in check while this parachute makes its way up to the end of the lines, maybe that will stop some of that. Well, it did. And even as a side benefit, it causes the parachute to open slower for some reason or other. Now see, I'll take this, take this first loop, put it under the rubber band nearest to me. Okay, get me another loop like this, and put it under the middle one, just like that. Hold this up here, get me this last loop, and put it under the top one. Telephone. Okay, now there's all the strings, see, held down in the rubber bands. Okay, now the front of the parachute is still right here. It's the front of the parachute. So I lay that right down on there. Now these risers right here are, you can see they're all the way down to the bottom of the pack. So I'm just going to turn them back up under here to keep them from getting caught up in this flap here. So I take this bottom flap, put it up here, take the top flap, pull it back down here. Now again, we want to make sure that our steering lines and everything are in there where they're supposed to be. Okay, and they are. Okay, so I'll pull this over first. That's the one that's got the little, I don't know what you call that. It's a triangle or whatever. Okay, and just kind of tuck these back in here. And then stretch this right up over here and slip it. So you can put that grommet right over the little, what, triangle, what do you call it? Okay, now here, this release pin is attached to rubber bands that are attached to the feet. So you pull this pin up to this grommet and push the pin right through there, and here's where you need like 2 or 3 hands sometimes. You hold that and take this string. Now see, this string has a little circle, little whatever you call it, hooked onto the end of this string. Now we got rubber bands from here to the feet, but from here up to the shoulder is a string, so you don't want it to have a lot of give. So you pull it over here and hook it over that. I hope you can see that little release pin there. And now I'm just going to take my string and pull it back over here a little. Okay, can you see now the rubber band from the feet hooked into this pin? This pin is shoved through the little triangle there. And then from here up it's a little braided line, just the same line that's on his parachute, with that ring on the end, and it just hooks over that release pin. And now, well, I've got my elastics loose here. I made these on mine to where I could take them loose, so that if I wanted to, I could store the parachute packed, but release these things so that they wouldn't stretch. If you store it packed, these elastics will lose their stretch in a short time. But the next one I built for myself, I'm not going to do this because it's a lot of trouble to hook and unhook these things. So what I do now when I store mine, I just leave the pack unpacked. I don't pack it so I don't have to worry about these hooks and all, because they're just a source of trouble or something to get hooked on it there. But anyway, that's the way it works. Now this, I'll show you here what happens when you, well, I've got the radio here. Let's just do it with the radio. Okay, now that beep, that right here, you can see I have a beeper when you turn the transmitter off. It activates the thing. That's in case you're out in the middle of a cornfield somewhere and you can find him. Okay, I'll activate this and you can see how this works. Oops, wrong arm. Okay, there it is. It came out and that would open. Okay, now that is basically all there is to packing the parachute. There's no big secret about it. It's just simple, and Wally has really got it figured out. It works every time. Now that's not saying you won't have a failure from time to time, but I'm talking about his manner of packing the chute. It always opens. If it can get out into the airstream, it'll open. But if the strings are hung up on something somewhere else, of course, it could cause you problems. Now, when you turn the receiver off, then of course that'll stop the beep. But that is very nice if you fly around cornfields and things, or soybeans are worse than cornfield. And this way, you can find them in a hurry. Otherwise, we've looked for them for hours. Everything that I can think of, I think it's enough to where you'll be successful. And I hope you have as much fun as we've had with them. So look forward to seeing you in Ohio at the Skydiver Rally. It's I think it's September the 23rd and 24th, I believe. You can check back with me. Wally called me the other day and he's sending out flyers. So as soon as I get that, we'll probably send emails to everybody. And look forward to seeing you there. It was a real good time last year, and I expect this year's going to even be better. So hang in there and get it ready to go, and we'll see you there.